Hey all, and welcome back to another episode of There's Danger Here. I'm Leilani,
And I'm Sam.
and today we are going into Utah. I feel like I've had this thing with talking about women more lately than male killers. Well, you had your episode on Susan
Oh,
Monica,
yeah.
and then I focused on Martha Moxley. And I mean, she obviously not a killer, but a lot more focus on the women lately.
I usually give them a little more grace.
Yeah?
Yeah, there's something about it.
Well,
I like,
this one we're not going to.
okay.
No grace. Okay?
I just feel like women, they've got it harder. There's a show called Snapped.
I don't think I've ever actually, I mean, I know what it's about, but I don't think I've ever actually watched an episode on it.
Yeah, well,
Not all about that.
it makes sense.
I get it. All right, well, let's talk about Ruby Franke.
Okay.
Ruby Franke was born Ruby Griffiths on January 18th, 1982, in Logan, Utah. She is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or LDS community,
hmm
the oldest of five to parents Chad and Jennifer Griffiths. When she was young, the family moved to Roy, Utah. At 18, Ruby attended Utah State University, and there she met Kevin Franke.
Hmm.
Kevin was born on October 9th, 1978 in Ogden, Utah, and is also a member of the LDS community. And at the time that the pair met, he was a 22-year-old senior majoring in civil engineering.
Okay.
So a lot of this information comes from Ruby's daughter, who wrote a book about her life in the household. And she says, as of this time, Ruby did attend Utah State, but it was more to find a man than actually, go through
Right.
college. It wasn't.
She is a means to an end.
Yeah.
Like,
hmm
yeah,
And really, she wanted to just be a typical LDS mother with a big family.
right. The
Um,
best way to find a bachelor is in school.
and
Yeah.
I guess she had these rules that the guy had to be, I think it was like 5 inches taller than her, and she really wanted somebody who was an engineer because her dad was an engineer. And I was like, oh, okay, that's very specific.
Isn't that like, I feel like all girls are like that at some point.
I don't
No, you weren't like that?
know. I mean, for a long time, I did have a type. I liked the taller guys for sure. And lately, I've been going for more of the short kings, I guess.
Yeah, see, I was like, I want a guy who is taller than me, which is a feat.
hmm
Um, he needs to have played football growing up. He needs to be in like a career where he uses his hands. Like I had all of these like things that I had like picked out.
No, I don't. I mean, I think my biggest bias for a long time was that they needed to know car mechanics, which
Oh, well,
sounds weird,
that's a good bias to have.
but growing up, my mom always said not to date a man who knew less about cars than I did. And my uncles would help us with our cars when we first, when we got our first cars. I think my sister had like disc brakes or something, or not disc brakes, drum brakes. And so he like taught her how to change them because the disc brakes are easier. And I had like the muffler system on my car went bad, and the only reason I got to take it to the shop is because we didn't have a lift to bring the whole car up. But I had to buy the entire muffler system from my other uncle in like a shop. So I had to like pick it out with him, and then he ordered it, and then I was allowed to take it to a shop. So a guy can't not know about cars in our family.
You would have had to find a mechanic. I
Yeah.
feel like not many men would know more about cars on that level right then. Like,
Well, I found two.
well, way to go. Good job. Congratulations.
Now that's not it's less of a thing that I
Yeah.
actually care about. But it's just so funny that it like transferred over into my adult life where if a guy was like, "Oh, I don't know anything about this," or "I don't know how to change my oil," I'm like, "Ew,
Yeah.
ew."
Yeah, there would for sure, like for the longest time, if you didn't watch American sports at all,
hmm
I was like, you're a loser. You're a loser. You can't, there's no way that you can come around my family.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no way. The amount of really eligible bachelors that I turned away for that is insane.
Yeah.
I also went to college a lot like Ruby Frank, thinking, I'm going to find my husband here, and then just drop out of college.
Oh. See, I don't know what my thoughts were when I first attended college, but it was more of a social scene, and then I joined the army. So
Yeah.
it was in a whole different.
See, I didn't find my husband, and I still dropped out of college.
Dang it.
I know.
All right, let's get back to this. So 2 weeks after meeting, Ruby asked if they were going to get married, and Kevin said yes. On December 28th, 2000, just 3 months after meeting, the couple married.
Oh my God.
Okay, I hear this and I'm like, oh my God, how could you ask me how fast it was that my ex and I got married? It was quick, but in our
How
defense,
quick?
months. But
Really?
in our defense, we were getting deployed. So it was,
Oh, I mean, there's like death knocking on your door potentially.
yeah, that's one
It's
of the
morbid
reasons.
to say that, but
Well, it was more like if we were married, we could be housed together while we were there.
mm,
And you still get separation pay and you get all these extra
benefits.
benefits
Right.
from being married right away rather than waiting. I mean, should have waited, but we didn't. And
Yeah.
it worked for 10 years until I had enough
It's
of it.
pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Um, but still, if I feel like if you're not in one of those situations where it's like there's something going on, especially the deployment or the in the military, so it's pretty common, but it's you can get separated because you can get stationed somewhere else. They can give you orders and be like, cool, now you're going to Germany.
Right.
And it's less likely to happen if you're married. They try to house you
Yeah.
together, send you to the same assignment.
For them,
But for
they wanted
this, the
to
average couple,
have kids.
yeah, she was ready. She's
And
like, that's
he,
it, let's go. And he's very acquiescing throughout this whole thing. You'll see that he's kind of the submissive one between the two
yeah,
of them.
as a good LDS boy would be.
Mhm. On December 28th, 2000, oh, I said that, sorry, they got married. So together, the pair had 6 children, the first of which was Cherie. And I don't know if Cherie, oh, it's Sherry, sorry,
Share. Well,
Sherry. You know why I said the other name.
yeah.
It's habit. Born on March 3rd, 2003. In 2005, Chad was born, followed by Abby in 2007 and Julie in 2009. The youngest son, Russell, was born in 2011, and the last of the children, Eve, was born in 2013.
Not that long ago.
No. Oh, 2 years for between the kids. So there's some time.
It's still a lot of kids.
Oh, I know. I have 3 and I feel like I'm wrangling a circus half the time.
Oh my God.
So I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. And I mean, the age difference in these kids is similar to mine. It's about 2.5 years for each of them. And it can be a lot.
Yeah.
As the social media and internet era hit, Ruby rode the wave. Before hitting it big in the social media scene, Ruby first created a blog titled Good Lookin' Home Cooking.
Oh, I had
So
not heard that one yet.
I had not. And I wasn't really big into reading the blogs and stuff like that, even when it was big in the mid 2000s, I guess. Um, of this, if again in the book, I think Sherry mentions like she thought how funny it was that she created this blog, and she's like, really, she didn't cook these fancy meals all the time, so it's weird that there was this blog
That,
as if she did.
right.
So it just starts this like fake persona, followed by Full Suburban and Yummy Mummies. Um,
Yummy mummies?
yeah, Yummy Mummy. Still in the background, she was a harsh disciplinarian. Ooh, I can talk. According to, again, the eldest daughter, she would slap the kids, but not hard enough to cause bruises. The kids all packed their lunches and found their way to school, even like the youngest. So,
Mm.
I mean, starting immediately. And Ruby had this like thing about kids and their independence, and she said that it was a way for them to be more independent, and that's why she had these kind of stricter rules where they did all this.
Ironic considering she was going to college to find a man.
I know. And um a lot of the stuff was a little on the overboard side. There was a point where the eldest daughter talks about um having to walk to school, and it's like a mile, and at first I was like, oh, that's so terrible. And then I
Right.
thought about my childhood and I was like, pretty sure when I was in middle school, high school, when I didn't catch the bus, it was about a mile, maybe a little more actually. And I was like, oh, it's not really that big of a deal. But I get there in Utah, so the winters are harsh.
Oh,
Again,
yeah.
I grew up in the Midwest.
Oh,
The
yeah.
winters were also harsh. So I'm like, that's a tough call. I think the difference is my mom was working, which is why we either caught the and we could catch a bus, so we
Right.
either caught the bus or walked until we could drive. But she was a stay-at-home mom, so it feels a little bit different. Like I think if my mom was home, she would have driven us if we didn't make
Yeah.
the bus.
And like it seems like these kids couldn't have asked her for a ride.
Yeah,
Like,
she did say that on their birthdays was the day that she would pick them up from school, and that was it.
oh,
That
that's
was their
so
birthday treat.
stupid.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
Oh my God.
Here I am, and my oldest son got to stay home today because he pulled the skip school for a day card. And I'm like, all right, well, guess you're staying. This is your one for the year. Like, they get one a year. I'm not going to school today. He chose it today.
But oh man, I'm thinking about who her parents were.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about the community to think if that's like kind of their standards or if it's just her standards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We didn't.
I mean, I know there's a lot of like the missions that these
Mm,
kids go on, there is a lot of walking involved.
oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's part of the like sacrifice that they're making though, is that they are supposed to be on their feet
Hmm.
the whole time. So maybe there's a little bit of that involved there too.
Potentially.
I don't know.
I'm not sure. At the same time, several of Ruby's sisters found some internet notoriety and made money off of vlogging their own lives. Ruby seemed to get on board with this idea, and she too created the Eight Passengers page in January of 2015, posting her first video on the 8th, a vlog that ended up having millions of viewers. She scripted, not subscribed,
Mm.
everyday things about the family. When Sherry eventually started her own vlog, as it amassed staggering numbers herself, Ruby told her she would be taking 10% of her earnings as management fees.
What?
Yeah. At first, she wasn't allowed to get any money at all because she was under 18, but I guess once she turned 18, she's like, well, I'm taking 10% off the top. I was like, no.
Yeah.
Mm,
I'll move out.
yeah. Well, Ruby had set up all the kids' bank accounts. So she was still associated with her bank account as well and all of the kids'
Yeah.
bank accounts because she was co-signed to them. Even the ones that were like Chad and her were getting ready to get close to 18.
I feel really yucky about parents who monetize their kids.
Yeah. I I think
L-
it's a
I,
so it's a
Let me clarify
okay.
actually as well, because Scott and I have had this conversation.
Hmm.
If a kid, because my daughter watches all of the, she loves YouTube. It's
Hmm.
her favorite thing to do on like any form of a screen, YouTube.
Certainly.
And she'll watch all these videos of like young kids like acting and playing with toys and things like that. And she loves that. And I feel differently about that because those kids appear to be enjoying themselves and it
Hmm.
appears to be something that they are interested in doing. I struggle when it sounds like she's scripting these
Yeah.
like interactions with her family and then forcing, and who knows, maybe they enjoyed it and I could be wrong, but like she is forcing her kids to get in front of a screen.
Hmm.
And then her oldest daughter seems to maybe enjoy it because she starts her own little thing, but then now you're taking her money. Like it's like yucky to
Yeah.
me. Like,
From the book, it sounds like she didn't, oldest and most of the kids didn't enjoy the Eight Passengers. But because she was so used to kind of that realm, she's like, well, I could do my own and do stuff that I actually like. And
right,
that's when she kind of amassed her own followers. And they took the money, which I don't like. Um, my oldest has come to me and said that, he's wanted to do stuff with video games. I'm like, if you want to, like, I can help you set it up.
right,
Um, and we have accounts that it would go into for him. I don't like the idea of taking the kids' money, I guess, is what
right,
I would that part of it. And I wouldn't force them. Like forcing them
right,
to do things would be above and beyond. Like my youngest has wanted to do some things, but I'm like, you are not the person that would want to stick with it. So I'd rather you wait until you're older and have kind of more of a comfortability with it and the drive to want to do it yourself because I don't want you to start it and then it get somewhere and then you not want to do it. And I'm like, oh, you really should just stick with it. And then I feel like I'm pushing him. I'm like, I
right,
don't want that
right.
situation either. So I'm kind of more of the parent that's like, maybe don't,
Yeah.
maybe don't, you know?
Yeah. Like also the idea of even if these kids are just sort of like a part of it, just by the being the bystander, like
Hmm.
they are now forever going to be on the internet,
Yeah.
like whether they like it or not. And that's also just feels very strange to me that I know that's the age we live in now. I
Hmm.
used to be totally against it. Like I was like, I'll never post a picture of my daughter on any social media. And now I'm like, well, that's stupid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, these kids are potentially going to have very private moments posted to YouTube
Yeah.
forever that they will never be able to get back.
Hmm.
Like, and in this case, it turns into a whole, like, they're going to be changed forever.
Yeah. And they were.
Yeah.
So at this time, Chad began acting out. Again, older sister said that he'd always been kind of a prankster, but this eventually got him expelled from their LDS school.
Oh,
So I guess it sounds like they had like a no, like a zero tolerance policy, and he had kind of done a few pranks that didn't seem super terrible for what they were, but ended up getting kicked out. Then, when they were on a brand deal excursion, he almost ruined the event, according to, again, Sherry. So while her page started lighthearted, often of the family's daily lives, things were not so cheery at home. Then there was a post that seemed to set off a chain reaction. So again, I just said that, the oldest was kind of getting into pranks and things like that. So he was sent to Anasazi, and according to the Anasazi Foundation, their mission is, quote, is a way of walking in the wilderness and in life. Commencing in 1968, Larry D. Olson and Ezekiel C. Sanchez gleaned and developed the Anasazi Way from years of trial, error, and experience walking in nature with thousands of young people. They attribute their learning and awakenings to the Creator, their families, perceptive young walkers, discerning parents, and their associates at Anasazi. The principles in the official statement and the 10 guiding principles constitute the foundation of the Anasazi Way. End quote.
weird.
Yeah. And so, again, it's a wilderness camp essentially. And they say that they acknowledge the Creator in all good things. And they're supposed to be respectful to each young walker's agency, so their ability to choose to walk forward or backward. And
Hmm.
yeah.
I mean, on like paper, it does is actually a great concept. I love the idea of like a wilderness camp for kids that are acting up.
Yeah.
Um,
And I know we've seen a lot of, I know there's been lot of negative ones in the news lately. I feel like there's so many documentaries of like the program and all these other
right.
ones where it was essentially a torture camp. This does not sound like that's the case. It sounds like it's actually
Pretty.
basically, Sherry said that, Chad went there and came back and was like, oh yeah, it was really like summer camp and we got to hang out and play outside and
Yeah.
I was with friends and it wasn't terrible.
See that I can understand that.
Yeah. So he accidentally had a good time.
Okay.
According to the information that Ruby put out at the time, Chad was troubled, and so they sent him away to camp. In 2020, the 15-year-old returned and pulled pranks on his younger brother. Like, it's not like it changed him as a human being. Allegedly, one of them was pointing a BB gun at him and then hanging him from a basketball hoop.
Oh God.
Sorry. For which Chad's punishment was to lose his bedroom. And not just lose it, he slept on the floor in the family room or on a beanbag for 7 months.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
So once this kind of
How
came
old
about,
was he?
15. And so once this kind of came about that this was happening, people started to look back at her other videos and they were starting to see these small things that sounded more like abuse than they sounded a regular mom.
Like that, it doesn't make sense to me either.
Yeah.
Like your kid is to you acting up, so let's take away their sleep. Like,
Yeah. So she had it became this huge thing where she talked about like if they can't be responsible for their actions and they're, not responsible enough or not, they don't get something. And like that just Sounds like an extreme form of punishment and a way to excuse your behavior for it.
Yeah, you take their cell phone away.
Yeah.
You don't take their bed away.
Yeah.
The bed is the one thing that might actually give them some form of like resemblance of normalcy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to sleep.
Yeah. And we're not trying to torture somebody.
Right.
Like, that's a little ridiculous. And then near the same time, Ruby released a video stating that her 5-year-old, Eve, forgot to pack her own lunch and as a result would go hungry the rest of the day at school. That Eve knew it was her responsibility and had even told Ruby it was packed. Like you could see the video is her in a car and she's talking about it. And she's like, I know everybody wants me to go feed her, but it's her responsibility. And because she didn't do it, she gets to go hungry.
Oh my God.
Like
Like,
the bear forgets everything right now. And he's older than that by years. And I'm still like, hey, I'm not going to make you starve
right.
because you forgot to pick up your lunch pail. I'm going to go bring you your lunch pail
I'm
and we're
gonna,
going to have hot lunch.
yeah. Or you're gonna be a nightmare.
Yeah.
You'll
And
be,
it's not conducive to learning because
right.
if you're hungry, you're focused on being hungry. They've proven that time and
Yeah.
time again. So, what does that do for a 5-year-old?
Nothing.
Nothing.
And
Yeah.
it's not even like a lesson that you're gonna hold on to as a 5-year-old.
No.
You're not gonna remember, like, make that connection of like, oh, I forgot my lunch. I was hungry that day. I can't ever do that again. You're
Hmm.
gonna forget. You're 5 years old.
She's 5.
5 years old.
She's not like what age is it that the brain is fully developed? 20 something?
Yeah,
Like, oh, a 5-year-old is supposed to be that developed that they have to remember everything?
that's insane.
Like, if that was the case, then they could live on their own at 5 and they can't.
It seemed like I'm like, what's the motive of this? Like, of Ruby? Like, does she think she's being a good mom?
We don't know. I don't know. But we do know this resulted in many of the viewers creating a petition with over 18,000 signatures and getting
Wow.
Child Protective Services involved.
Wow.
So CPS entered the home and then cleared the family. Later in an interview with The Wrap, Ruby claimed that when CPS came to the house, they actually asked her for parenting advice, which feels unlikely.
That's really unlikely. First of all, the people coming don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get me wrong, it's a very difficult job, but they don't care.
No,
They're
yeah.
not gonna ask, how are you doing this? You're so good.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-mm.
no.
If CPS had to be involved, they're not that good.
Yeah.
Still, the result of this action was evident. Ruby started posting about how she was being villainized, and then her vlogging began to dwindle until it came to a halt. Around the same time as these videos, Ruby connected with mental health counselor and therapist Jodi Hildebrant.
Hmm.
Don't worry, she's not a good person. So let's talk a little bit about Jodi. Jodi Hildebrant was born on June 15th, 1969. She grew up in Tucson, Arizona, and attended Canyon del Oro High School. She became a Utah licensed counselor starting in 2005. In 2007, she started the company Connections in Orem, Utah for professional and personal counseling. Jodi was a licensed mental health counselor and fellow LDS member. But Jodi's not perfect, and at one point in 2012, Jodi's license was put on probation for 18 months for unprofessional conduct for violating HIPAA.
Oh.
She had given private information of a patient to one of the FLDA church leaders and Brigham Young University without permission. The patient named Adam Steed, and I'm only naming him because he's the one that talked about it, claimed to people in 2023 that because of her, his life was destroyed, specifically through her, quote, super sophisticated forms of manipulation. And her doctrine is that she believes that relationships need to die before they can be reborn, end quote.
Huh.
So it sounds like she had claimed that he was like this abuser and this terrible person. And she has a tendency or history to do that to men, where she's like, nope, you're a horrible human being. And I'm going to let the world know you're horrible and claim all these abuses, even though there's nothing going on.
Whoa.
And so she had, for almost a decade, I think, had been like one of the LDS's, like if you needed counseling or wanted to go to counseling, that's who they
She
would
was
go to.
recommended.
Yeah. And then they had to take that away after this.
Holy cow. Talk about like the worst luck. Like you sit down on her couch and have no idea that she's plotting to destroy you.
Yes. Still, after this 18-month period, her license was reinstated, but she again no longer was on the referral list for clients. Ruby joined the company that she had created and was listed as a certified mental fitness trainer.
Gross. That is one of the worst titles ever created.
Mental fitness trainer.
Oh, I hate that.
That feels like the name for somebody who tortures somebody.
Um, it feels like someone who has not succeeded in life in any other career, so they've made up a bunch of words that smash together and sound sort of cool to hide the fact that they're a loser.
See, to me, it sounds like a torture. Like, I waterboarded you, and now you're better for it, so your mental fitness is better.
Yeah,
That's what
I'm
it
like,
reminds me of.
if I see that come up on anyone, I'm
Not
gonna be like, you're stupid.
fair.
You need to go work out your mental fitness a little bit because it's lacking.
So at this time, this is when her vlog is dwindling, and Jodi and Ruby started uploading videos under Moms of Truth and the Connections business webpage in 2022, bringing back Ruby's social media presence. She even reported that the reason that her other vlog didn't have any posts was due to the efforts in the new company. Still, nothing sounds super crazy at this point, but in the background, Jodi is busy manipulating Ruby and Kevin.
Hmm.
And Jodi started to entangle herself into the Franke family, even moving into their house for a short period of time when
What?
she claimed that she was ill. But I guess the whole time, so this is at the point that Sherry is off to college. She's, early 20s now at this point. And I guess they moved into her room. And so she came home to get something at one point, and Kevin was like, "Oh, you'll have to text your mom and see if you can make an appointment to get into your room."
Oh my God.
And every time that she was in there, they were just in the room. Like, what were they doing?
Ruby and Jodi were both just in the room?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Weird.
I know.
Very weird.
I know. For the Christmas of 2022, the younger children received no presents to remind them not to be so entitled, which wouldn't be so sad if they were just like, we're just not doing Christmas, we're not doing presents, we'll
Uh-huh.
do whatever else. Except the older children still got them and were made to open them in front of the younger kids.
Oh, that's disgusting.
I know. At times, Ruby brought in Kevin to speak about marriage counseling, married life, and navigating children onto their most recent vlogs. And Jodi began calling Kevin bad and used her business's counseling group to bolster her ideas.
Yeah.
Again,
She's calling Kevin bad because she wants to sleep with Kevin's wife.
that's what it sounds like, honestly, but I don't know.
100%.
She reported that Kevin was greedy and that Kevin and Jodi or Ruby, excuse me, needed to separate.
I mean, at this point, Jodi
I
is in the
know,
house, so
I
they
know.
need separation too. But
In order to save the marriage. That he was not to contact the family during the separation. And the separation was supposed to last a year.
because that's how you fix a marriage.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was meant not to speak to the entire family for a year until he was better. That the separation had to stay so that his bad intentions and thoughts didn't infect the rest of the family. And additionally, he was ordered to take eldest son Chad with him.
Oh, so like the men of the house
Mm-hmm.
who would probably be the ones to eventually just be like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah. Well, it sounded like they both kind of got indoctrinated into this idea. And so they really felt like
They needed to do
they
it.
needed to do it, and they
Right.
did. At this time, Sherry finds out that Chad didn't end up living with their dad. He moved in with some roommates or something and tried to contact him, and Chad was like, no, like,
We need a year, mom,
sister.
or sister.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, sister.
Sherry tried
Oh,
to find
that's
her.
sad. Okay.
Because it sounds like it also sounded like, according to the book, Sherry got kind of cut off from the family herself because she was the one pushing back against these things, and because she's living in the real world,
Right.
she can see the real world.
Right.
Everybody else is living in Jodi and Ruby's world. And so she finds out Chad's address and goes to see him. And he opens the door, but then he's like, yeah, we can't talk. And ends up like shutting the door on
Oh,
her.
that's so sad.
And it takes a while, I think, for this to be shaken. And it does sound like, they're working back into a good relationship. But how tough. And they're such impressionable ages at this time
Hmm.
that and it's your parents. Like,
And
that's just tough.
unpopular opinion too. Like, not every person who is religious is like this, but religion has a tendency to teach you just to trust what is being told to you.
Hmm.
So you're more inclined to have someone who you maybe like idolize for whatever reason come in and start telling you this is the truth, and you're more inclined to believe it.
Yeah, to say,
And as a
yes.
teenager, your brain goes, no, you guys are all wrong. And so
Mm.
Sherry probably was just like so on point with all of her reality. And
Yeah,
it would
I
be
know.
really frustrating.
It would be. So Kevin thought he was saving his marriage. In the meantime, DCFS was called multiple times by Sherry and the neighbors after the youngest kids were left home alone for days on end.
What?
But the laws in Utah allow for such things, which I didn't know. You just leave your kids alone.
Whoa.
So while the community tried pressing DCFS and the police, and they did show like this log of how many times, they've been called, they tried to go out there, sometimes they knock and they didn't answer, and there was like this revolving door of, calls and responses, but nothing ever comes from it. The neighbors would even leave food on the porch for the kids that were left behind so that they wouldn't go hungry.
That's a problem.
I know.
Like it you can almost like in I want to believe like so when you're telling me these things I'm thinking in my head like okay, how long did they leave these kids? As much as they should never leave these kids, but like did they leave them overnight? How long? It was a few days.
Days.
But if it's
Days.
so bad that the neighbors are noticing and they're noticing enough to go drop food off at the front door, I don't know what it would take for me to like recognize that
Hmm.
and then go to that point of like, oh,
Something has
they're
to be
gone
done.
again. It's time to bring these kids food. Like, it would have to have been like repeated, and I would have had like I
Hmm.
just would not be inclined to go drop a bag of groceries off on my neighbor's porch if
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just crazy.
Hmm. Um, so again, this was the time that Sherry was trying to find Chad, but he was indoctrinated into the ideas of Ruby and Jodi. And then in May 2023, Ruby moves her four youngest children in with Jodi to Ivins, Utah, which is 250 miles away from their home in Springville,
Hmm.
Utah. That is until August 30th, 2023, when a neighbor of Jodi's called the police in Ivins. One of Ruby's sons, 12-year-old Russell, ran to his house and was covered in wounds with tape on his ankles, and he appeared emaciated.
I've actually seen that video.
Have you?
Yeah.
I do know that there's like a new documentary coming out about it in the near future, but I didn't want to wait to do it, to read it or
Yeah.
watch it and then do this. I was like, I'm just doing
It
this.
just popped up in one of my extensive like YouTube
Hmm.
cop videos
Yeah,
that I watch. Like it just, you know how they just play? And I remember this one showing up
yeah.
and being like,
I've seen,
what the hell is this?
yeah, I've seen the one of the neighbor because they have the neighbor's phone call
Mm-hmm.
and how heartbroken that man sounds. Like you can hear him breaking up on the
Mm-hmm.
phone as he's trying to explain like what had happened.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
Yeah. There's like a ring camera of this
hmm,
kid. He's
hmm,
like in his underwear too.
I think so.
And it's like 110 degrees outside or something like that. It's
Hmm.
crazy.
When the police arrived, 10-year-old Eve was found at Jodi's home during a search in similar condition to her brother. As a result, Jodi and Ruby are immediately arrested for aggravated child abuse.
Thank God.
Yes. Yes.
But
But they act like they have no idea why. Like they're like, why? I don't get it. What? I'm
like,
sorry, what? You thought duct taping your children was fine?
and the feeling you would get as like a police officer walking into that scenario, I feel like would be so conflicting. Like, because it was like an affluent neighborhood. It was
Mhm.
really nice homes
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
a lot of money there. And I just feel like you just wouldn't expect to see a like torture room for children.
Yeah. I think anywhere I would be
Yeah,
I would
for
yeah.
sure. For sure. I think you're right, for sure. But I guess there's something just like the mental understanding of like a trap house and versus like a $1 million mansion
That's
just
fair.
feels eerie. And woman's house too. I think that also throws me off.
Oh, yeah. See, this is what I'm talking about. Listen, women are not always good.
Yeah.
Um, but there are still two more children. So police go to the Franke home in Springville, Utah, but the house is empty. And eventually they're informed that two of the children are with a friend. The two middle daughters were found with another Connections employee's house in American Fork, Utah, and they were handed over to the state child welfare system. It doesn't sound like anything was particularly wrong from them, and that the person that was taking care of them was actually taking care of them. There is a video where the person is in handcuffs at first when they're talking to her, but I'm sure that they were probably suspecting something nefarious was
Could
happening.
you imagine like watching your friend's kids and then the police show up and put handcuffs on you and
Handcuffs.
accuse you of abusing them?
I don't think that they accused at first, but they were like, "Why do you have these children?" Basically, is like, but once they were like, "Oh," they said that they were going away for a little while with the two youngest, so they needed these two to be watched, but closer to home, because they're school age children.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that and both of like. Because it's a husband and wife, and both of them were like, no, no, like we know them from connections. They work in the company. Like we're just watching because they asked us to, and the girls look fine on the video when they come out. They're like, yeah, we're just here.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
oh man.
I know. I'd be so upset about it
I
though.
would
It
if you knew nothing about what was going on, I would burn them down.
There would be two layers, I think, of anger from me if this situation happened and I was under. First, I'd be mad that like, why are they here assuming that I'm doing something terrible? And second, once I find out something happened to the younger kids, why didn't you just leave them with me? I would have taken all four of them then. I would have taken care of all four of
Yeah.
them. Why did you feel the need to keep the youngest two and torture them?
Yeah.
I
I mean, it would go on. My
Yeah.
brain would continue to like, why do I work for your stupid fucking company?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure, but I
Like,
about the kids,
right. Like, oh, I would be so livid. I would want to kill them. I'd
Yeah.
want to kill them.
Yeah, I'd be very upset.
Yeah.
So at this time, Sherry posted on Instagram as a result, quote, "Today has been a big day. Me and my family are so glad justice is being served. We've been trying to tell the police and CPS for years about this, and so glad they finally decided to step up," end quote. She also sent a photo, I think, and it just has it says finally. And
Mm,
it's just like the police cars that are out before she posted this. And again, so Jodi and Ruby were both charged with 6 counts of child abuse, and as such were held without bail.
thank God.
hmm They did, of course, the police went and talked to Kevin. He's like, I have no idea. I have no idea. Like, I didn't know what was happening. After she was arrested, it took a while, but Kevin did file for divorce and was granted it in 2023.
Yeah.
Sherry reports that it took some time for Kevin to shed the beliefs that Ruby had been drilling into him, allowing them to have a relationship again as well.
Yeah.
So
So,
even Kevin was separated. Like at one point, Kevin was working on the campus that she was at, and they like crossed paths and he wouldn't even say hello. Like he just kind of turned his head because he was like, no contact for a year.
right.
She said, no contact. That means none of my kids.
I've also seen that video of the police interrogating him when he finds out that his kids
Yeah.
were in the hospital.
hmm
And it is like the wildest thing to watch. Like he's sitting at this table, there's like five police officers around him, and he doesn't know why he's there.
hmm
They are asking him all these questions about his kids. He assumes they're all at his home.
Yeah.
And he has no idea that they've been
Moved
at
around.
Judy's home
hmm
or whatever, Jody's home. And they don't believe him.
which is
they they
horrible.
really don't believe him, but like I Jodi had convinced him that he had a porn problem.
Hmm.
So he like starts admitting about that, like in this interview with these police, that he's like an addiction to porn, and he was trying to repent for his sins to his wife, and then like they like you hear him continue to talk, and he starts talking about like what his porn problem, like his pornography problem was, and it was like he would ask Ruby to wear like a like sexy shirt or something like that. And I was like listening to this, like, oh my God, this
Yeah.
poor man, like just so brainwashed.
Hmm.
And then when he finds out his kids are in the hospital, like the sheer blankness in him, because I don't
Like
like
the
you can
shock sets
see
in.
like his brain sort of like rewiring in that moment
Hmm.
of like, oh my God, what the like what the hell is happening right now?
Yeah.
And it's totally wild. You can see like just someone who's been totally brainwashed start to sit in a room with people who are not, and like them telling him like fact after fact after fact, and it like slowly starting to penetrate
Hmm.
in like real time, and it's so strange. It's really a very interesting video to watch. I
I bet.
highly recommend finding it.
Yeah. Um, so Ruby decided to take a plea. She reported that from May to August was when the abuse occurred. Ruby reported that for Russell, he was forced to carry boxes of books up and down stairs, do wall sits for hours. They made him do manual labor outside without shoes or stand directly in sunlight for days without a shirt on. Again, we're talking about 110 degrees outside.
It's amazing he didn't die.
It is. It is. He did have like, all the
Like
um
burn
blister,
marks.
yeah,
Yeah.
blisters from I can't imagine. He was denied food and water and even punished when he tried to sneak water because he's trying to live.
What the
When he was
hell?
able to eat, it was bland chicken and rice. And after he attempted to run away in July, he was routinely tied up.
What was their purpose?
I have no idea. They kept telling them that they were bad and they needed to repent, and this is how they um basically got exorcised. Like they need to exorcise their demons, and this is how they're doing it.
Holy shit.
Um and they even used handcuffs or was forced to lie on his stomach and tied up in a way that his arms and legs were lifted off the ground.
Oh my God.
The binding started to cut into him, so they applied cayenne and honey to his open wounds, then duct taped over the open wounds, and then put the bindings over top of that.
What the absolute hell?
And that's the sugar coated version of what happened to him.
I like, I just like, it doesn't make sense. Like,
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around it. Like, you are their mother.
Yeah. Even at times admitting to kicking him with her boots on.
Like, oh, yeah, it's weird.
Hmm. For Eve, who was 9 at the time of the abuse, she was subjected to the same treatment, and she was told she was evil and punished, and she was isolated from everyone else in the house. She was also forced to run barefoot on dirt roads in the midsummer sun, like on top of the rest of the stuff, the same stuff that's happening to Russell. For all of this, on February 20th, 2024, Ruby Franke received a sentence of 1 to 15 years for each count to run consecutively. She is currently serving her time at Utah State Correctional Facility in Salt Lake City and will see the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole as early as December of 2026.
What?
So, if you're 1 to 15 years for each count, which means they only accepted a plea for 4 counts, which means she could serve 4 years.
That's insane. She will too.
Probably. In December of 2023, Jodi also pleaded guilty for the same 4 counts of child abuse, receiving the same sentencing as Ruby. She is at the Utah State Correctional Facility and will see the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole in December of 2026 as well. This sentencing is mandated by law. In sentencing, it's not a judge who decides, meaning it's up to that Board of Parole and Pardons for the 4 to 30-year sentence. Now, I know the math isn't mathing because I said 30 years, not 60.
Right.
But apparently Utah has some laws on consecutive sentencing, and as such, the maximum time served is 30 years.
Oh my God. That's okay. Utah's the state to commit some crimes, it sounds like.
Apparently.
And 100% they're getting out.
I don't even want to think about that right now.
I mean, I have a little bit of hope that there'll be pressure from like the
Community.
community of all of the people, the millions of people who know about this story, like that when this day comes up, they'll be outside of that parole board screaming like,
I hope the kids go in and say, "This is what you did to me."
right.
Like, and look at those adults and say, "This is what she did to me.
Yeah.
I don't think she should maybe get out 4 years
But
for
then
the
how,
torture."
like, who's on that? Who's there? Like, I feel like if it's a panel of people who share similar beliefs of religion and
No,
ideology,
stop.
they're getting off.
I
They're
know.
white chicks. They're white women who are like,
They are horrible human
I
beings. They
know,
should have to be in there for life.
they should. Yeah.
The judge ruled in February 2024 that Jodi must set aside $100,000 from the sale of her Ivins, Utah home for restitution for Franke's youngest children. As for Kevin, he did a few things. First, in addition to the restitution from future sale of her home, Kevin sued Jodi, quote, "an effort to preserve her wealth and assets until appropriate action can be taken to make the kids whole," end quote, according to Fester, his attorney.
Uh-huh.
So he's like, no, $100,000 for
Not
that
enough.
torture, not acceptable amount.
Yeah. I want everything she's ever had.
Yeah. Yeah. And she had millions.
Yeah.
Like, the kids should get it.
Yeah.
As the 4 youngest Franke children, as of this time, they had been in custody of the Utah Division of Child and Family Services since Franke's arrest in 2023. Kevin had been fighting for full custody of the children in juvenile court, but as of April 2024, they were still under the custody of the state, Kester told People.
How?
I don't know. Why wouldn't they just go back to dad? He didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah. And they were still married.
I hope at this point they have, but I didn't see any updates after that time.
Yeah.
In July of the same year, he also urged Utah state legislators for stronger child welfare laws, claiming that Jodi and Ruby took advantage of the system's loopholes and limitations. This is per the Salt Lake Tribune. Quote, "It is a lot to deal with every day. The question of what if, what could have been done, what should have happened, what I should have done, what others should have done, it haunts you," end quote. Kevin told Utah KSL in September of 2024.
Yeah. As much as I would like to sort of yell at him about it, it's like, not like he's not the one who did it.
No.
Like,
and he couldn't have known.
Right. You would, he knew that she was he knew she was crazy, but he fell in love with her crazy, I guess, at a young age. And so you just get convinced that that's normal and that's who she is. And yeah, we make our 15-year-old son sleep on a beanbag for 7 months. That's what people do.
Yeah.
And then you're convinced you're an awful man and you need to go repent by yourself for a year. Like, yeah. And he was doing it for his family, ultimately. Like, being blind was for his family.
Yeah. So I know that that's a lot to swallow, but I have one more thing to add.
Oh, no.
Following the media surrounding the case, Jodi's niece Jessie came out against her. Jessie claimed that years before, she suffered abuse from Jodi. Jodi would lock her in a room for 12 hours at a time when she was little. I'm not saying like a young, like little. She was forced outside in sub-zero temperatures with a light sleeping bag. She couldn't speak, and if it was determined that she was disobeying, her mouth was taped shut with duct tape. Jessie reportedly had spoken with police when she was left outside with a sleeping bag, and Jodi talked her way out of it, saying that it was like preparation for some survival camp that she was going to do. Finally, Jessie managed to get free when a door was accidentally left unlocked and she was unattended. She reported thinking that as she didn't go now, she was going to be killed.
She probably was.
Yeah. Clearly, Jodi has a history of this, and I'd be curious if there's any reciprocity for these cases, if people came forward now, or if there's, the time limit.
I'm sure there's a statute of
Yes,
limitations.
I wrote that down because I was going to say that. Statute of
Yeah,
limitations. Smart words.
I know.
Or if it had happened, like how many cases of this have happened if just the niece is coming forward?
I,
It can't be doesn't sound like the first time.
no. You don't come up with cayenne and honey on the spot, I feel like.
I know. I was like, if it was just honey, that's actually really good for the wounds, but
Yeah.
cayenne's there is torture. But that's the end of the case of Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrant and the torture of the Franke children.
For now.
For now. Yeah, I don't want to talk about next year.
We'll have to remind people at the time.
December 2026.
Yeah.
There should be riots in the street.
Yeah.
Outside of where
in
the
Utah.
parole board's going. Yeah. Good night. Okay.
Oh, God.
Well, to all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.